So this weekend I saw Mandy, an action horror thriller directed by Panos Cosmatos, and honestly I had a great time with the movie. Mandy stars Nicolas Cage as our bloodthirsty protagonist Red Miller, Andrea Riseborough as Nicolas Cage's lover Mandy Bloom, and Linus Roach as Jeremiah Sand, our crazy cultist antagonist. Before I start this review, I want to let you know that this movie does show many flashing bright lights, so if you're epileptic, you may not want to see this movie in theater. Mandy also depicts burning crosses, so if that type of imagery offends you, then you may also want to avoid this movie. Here's your spoiler warning for later on in this video. Mandy is full of long, trippy, colorful establishing shots similar to Blade Runner 2049, except on LSD. However, the first half of the movie, similarly to Blade Runner 2049, is very slow, almost painfully slow. There are plenty of long, really awkward dialogue scenes between Nicolas Cage's character and Andrea Riseborough's character that I honestly thought was ad-libbed half the time. Although I do really appreciate the director's artistic vision, I do think that he could have shortened a lot of scenes while still keeping his artistic vision intact. However, this is only his second movie ever, so he's off to a pretty good start. Mandy itself is very visually appealing. There are a lot of post-apocalyptic-esque sets that remind me even more of Mad Max, aside from the Pinhead motorbike gang. Also, now that I mentioned them, their costumes were metal as fuck, so big props to the costume designers. Mandy's soundtrack and sound design were outstanding as well. Mandy's soundtrack was composed by the late Johan Johansson, who sadly passed away earlier in 2018. However, I can say without a doubt that Mandy was one of his best works. Personally, I'm not a fan of rock. I don't necessarily hate it, but I wouldn't listen to it on my own accord in my own free time. Mandy's soundtrack was awesome as hell, and it's rock. It also fits the atmosphere and visuals of the movie like a glove. However, there were a lot of post-production effects on the voices of a lot of characters in the movie that really took me out of the moment of the scene. For example, the evil demon riders from hell sounded so artificial that it completely distracted me from the brutal scenes on my screen. Sure, badass voices are badass, but Mandy took it a notch too far. It's never really made clear in the film whether they're actually supernatural or if they're just edgy dudes tripping balls, but either way they could have really toned down on the audio effects. Here's your spoiler again. I was going to have a plot synopsis at the beginning of the movie, but I felt like I wouldn't do it any justice, so I'm gonna kind of have like a brief-ish description of the plot and just kind of like talk about things that I thought were interesting and things that I liked. I also want to mention that the entire pace and atmosphere of the movie changes at around the halfway mark because that's where the title card is. That might sound a bit confusing, but the title card is actually an hour into the movie. Mandy is a tale of revenge set in the forested Shadow Mountain Range in California. Red, played by Nicolas Cage, and his partner Mandy, played by Andrea Riseborough, live quietly and peacefully in a secluded house surrounded by nature. One day, on her way to work at a nearby gas station, Mandy is passed by on the road by Jeremiah Sand and his cult followers, and she catches his eye. The rest is history. Jeremiah calls for help from a group of Hellraiser and Mad Max fanboys who assist him in kidnapping Mandy and nearly killing Red. I'll take a pause here to mention that this movie is really freaking weird, and it's honestly one of the best reasons to watch the movie. Jeremiah pulls out them 300 IQ plays and undresses in front of Mandy and his cult followers. And that causes Mandy to laugh hysterically. Well, one thing led to another, and Mandy is burned alive in front of Red. After this scene, and one of Nicolas Cage's signature freakouts, we have the title card. The first half was the precursor, setting up Red on his path for revenge like an 80s horror John Wick. The second half is pure, unadulterated gore-filled action with a chainsaw fight. I really have to commend the entire cast of Mandy for all their great performances, especially Nicolas Cage. After Mandy is burned alive in front of Red, Red breaks down and is reduced to a shell of who he once was, screaming, alone with a bottle of vodka in his underwear in his bathroom. Not gonna lie, I laughed pretty hard, but once you think of it, that was the entire turning point in the movie. Red goes and sees Mr. Exposition, a character who was never previously mentioned but gives Red a hunting crossbow bolts, and of course, plenty of exposition. Then Red goes hunting. Hunting what? Crazy evil, of course.
Crazy evil!
So he tracks down the evil demon rider dudes, shoots one with the crossbow off his bike, and then flips his car while driving at him. Obviously, instead of killing Red outright, they take him to their dumpster fire of an evil lair and just tie him up. The rest is kind of obvious. He kills some evil bad dudes, shoots one through the neck with the crossbow that doesn't instantly kill him, you know the drill. Mandy's primary antagonist is Jeremiah Sand, played by Linus Roach, and he honestly did a pretty good job. His voice is really creepy and he perfectly matches what I think a lunatic hippie cult leader should look like. Actually, in a few scenes, he really looked like Mads Mikkelsen as Caecilius in Doctor Strange. His motivations were really weird. His cult is never really explained, and actually, now that I think of it, not a lot was explained in the movie. Like I mentioned earlier, Red was never shown as more than a worker at a sawmill, but he apparently hit a hunting crossbow with some random dude who lives in a camper? Anyway, whatever. Jeremiah sees Mandy while she's walking to work, and he just has to have her. For some reason. Well, after he gets her, he undresses in front of her and she laughs. A lot. So he kills her. He went through a whole speech about how he knew that Mandy was special, and she was different, and that he was too. He went through all the trouble of hiring demon riders with LSD tar just to kill the only person he saw as special. Whatever. After he kills her, he just leaves Nicolas Cage and just pieces out to a random church-like thing in the middle of nowhere. I mean, look at this thing. It's between two massive mountains. What happens when it rains? The whole damn thing is just gonna get swept away. I guess his god never told him that. Well, no one is actually smart in this movie, like at all. I know it's kind of a trope with horror movies where everyone has an IQ that rivals a rock, but it will never not annoy me. At the beginning of the movie, Mandy hears weird noises outside of her home in a heavily wooded area. Instead of waking Red up, who, works in the woods for a living, Mandy decides to get up and just walk around in the woods. She comes across a weird mummified deer calf and just cries. I'm not entirely sure what made the noises, but it's just a weird movie coincidence, I guess. Red, although badass as hell, is similarly stupid. For example, this scene. Here you see a demon rider just chilling on the couch, watching 80s porn while snorting cocaine like Scarface, as you do on a Sunday. Instead of sneaking up and slitting his throat quietly, Red, with his big old brain, decides to yell and leap at him, giving the demon rider plenty of time to block his attack. Then, another demon rider comes in with a shotgun, shoots the TV that's playing porn instead of him, and then decides just to try to hit him with it. For no reason. I don't know. I guess it didn't have any bullets. Who cares? It's a movie.
You're in my shirt!
Well, fast forward a little bit, and you see a demon dude just chilling, standing in front of a burning car, just looking at it. Red has his crossbow and shoots him through the neck. Do you think the demon rider cares? Lamau, no. He just pulls the arrow out, all confused, tosses it aside, and goes straight back at staring into the flames. Red, instead of shooting him again, well, I mean, I guess you could argue that he was out of crossbow bolts, which is valid, I suppose. But there's also guns in Mandy's world, and there was a nice shotgun back inside the house, but whatever, I guess it's okay. Anyway, instead of shooting him again, Red just pulls out his axe thing, pulls up on him, and attacks him. The dude was already shot once in the neck and was probably bleeding out, but I guess they're superhumans because he was able to block Red's big axe thing with a little knife. There's also a chainsaw fight that had the internet buzzing about, and it was honestly kind of cool, except kind of anticlimactic. Red pulls up on this dude whittling wood and revs his chainsaw. The dude whittling wood just smirks and pulls out an even bigger chainsaw. Honestly, I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. They have a cool chainsaw fight, but the ending was literally just Red swinging a big old chain around, lassoing it around the other dude's neck, and pulling him onto a chainsaw that was on the ground, killing him. The end to the movie itself was hilarious. Red cuts his way through all the members of the cult and confronts Jeremiah. Well, Red grabs Jeremiah's head, and in an attempt to save himself, Jeremiah offers to suck his dick. No, I didn't make that up. Then, when that doesn't work, Jeremiah orders Red to kneel to him, and then he gets his head crushed Game of Thrones style.
I'll blow you, man. I'll suck your fucking dick.
Anyway, that's it for my review of Mandy. If you like the 80s, Mad Max Fury Road, chainsaw, fights, gore, or Nicolas Cage, then this movie is probably perfect for you. Obviously, the movie itself wasn't without faults, but it was very fun around the halfway mark. On the patent pending, not really, Deviation Review's arbitrary number score, I'm giving Mandy a 1 out of 2 for its story, 2 out of 2 for his acting, 1.5 out of 2 for its audio and soundtrack, 1.5 out of 2 for its visuals, and 1.5 out of 2 for its fun factor. I know in the last 2 Deviation reviews I've made, I had a section for cinematography, but I just included that in the visuals and added a fun factor, because that's what movies should be. Fun. Anyway, that about does it for this review of Mandy. If you have the chance and the time to watch it, I'd definitely do it. As always, please feel free to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed. If you have comments, questions, or feedback, go ahead and write out a comment and I'll be sure to reply. Did you like the movie or did you dislike it? Feel free to comment down below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.